Hello there. I'm afraid my old glasses are in need of some repair. Not to worry, though. With the right tool, I'll have these glasses ship-shape in no time. Oh, look. See this? This is the biggest screwdriver in my toolbox. And for this job, the biggest is not the best. See, it's very important to have the right tool for the job. And the right tool is not always the biggest and the strongest. See this little guy? That's the smallest screwdriver in my toolbox, but he is just perfect for tightening the little screw on the arm of my glasses. There, all done. Yeah, tools come in all sizes, and they all have their uses, big and small. And you know, the same thing is true for our friends, the tugboats. You know, I remember one day when one of the very smallest turned out to be the most useful. Even as the tugs waited for the dispatcher to begin the morning work meeting, there was a feeling in the air that this day was going to be special. Still, the tugs were surprised when the dispatcher told them they would all be needed for one ship. George the Valiant was certain there must be some mistake. All of us for one ship? Well, that's never happened before. So many tugs for one ship, said Theodore. You'd think the Queen was coming. Well, everyone laughed at that, except the dispatcher. You've guessed right, Theodore, he said. The Queen is coming. The Queen of all the ocean liners, the Queen Stephanie. Well, the tugs were speechless. You see, every tugboat in every harbor dreamed of one day leading the Queen into port, but very few ever got the chance. Emily was the first to speak. I'll be ready, she said. Me too, called out Theodore. Me three, said Hank. Just try not to get in the way, said George seriously to Theodore and Hank. Everyone will be watching. Well, Theodore knew he wasn't the biggest tug, but he was ready to do his best to help. The tugboats lined up neatly at the harbor's mouth and waited impatiently for the big ship. Suddenly, there she was, the Queen Stephanie, appearing out of a fog bank like some huge floating city. Well, she was the largest, most beautiful ship Theodore had ever seen. I mean, even Emily and George, who had been to sea many times and seen all kinds of wonderful ships, stared in amazement. Pearl, the pilot boat, was in charge of the tow. Well, are we going to float here all day, she said, or shall we help Her Majesty into our harbor? The tugboats roared into action. When they had all buttoned their tow ropes onto the Queen, Emily gave a blast on her whistle. The tugboats set out with the Queen Stephanie to a special dock where she would be staying. George was especially proud as he began to sail under Benjamin Bridge, towing the great ship. I'm the happiest tugboat in the world, he thought. And then, disaster. Benjamin Bridge called out, "Look out!" Oh, but it was already too late. There was a dreadful sound of grinding metal. And then the huge ship simply stopped. The Queen Stephanie was stuck under the bridge. Now, I can tell you that many, many other ships have passed under Benjamin Bridge over the years, but the Queen Stephanie was the biggest of them all, and the first to become stuck. You see, the water in the harbor rises and falls every day with the tides, and the tide this day was higher than ever because of a big storm just off the coast. But all that really didn't matter now. The great ocean liner was stuck, and it was up to the tugboats to get her unstuck. Benjamin strained to lift himself off the old Queen, but he couldn't do it. The great ship was wedged in tight. Theodore offered to help. Maybe I could help push. You can't help, roared George. Now, he didn't want to be mean, but, well, he was upset because the Queen Stephanie was stuck. I'm afraid we have another problem, said Foda quietly. The water in the harbor is still rising. No one spoke, but they all realized what Foda was telling them. If the water was rising, then the Queen Stephanie would rise as well. But Benjamin Bridge would stay exactly where he was right now. If they didn't manage to free the liner soon, well, either Benjamin or the Queen, or both, could be seriously hurt. The big tugs, George, Emily, and Foduck, they tried to pull the great ocean liner free from under the bridge, but they couldn't budge her one bit. "We just can't do it," said George, sounding like he was ready to give up. "We aren't strong enough," agreed Emily. But Pearl, the pilot boat, was not ready to quit. "We'll have to tug in the big harbor cranes, the ones used for unloading the ships," she said. "Then we'll set them up on the shore and lift the bridge off the Queen." It sounded like it might work. But was there enough time? "Let's get to it then," said Emily, who was always determined to try. "Come on, quickly," shouted George. Theodore couldn't bear to just float by and watch Benjamin Bridge in so much trouble. He wanted to do something, but what? "Emily, I want to help. What can I do?" he asked quietly. Well, Theodore had never seen Emily look so sad and so tired. "We all want to help, Theodore," she said, "but you better just keep away. You don't want to be too close when she couldn't even finish the sentence. Instead, she went sailing off to help with the cranes. "She must think we're too small to help," said Theodore sadly. "Look out!" yelled Theodore. He pushed Hank out of the way just in time. It had been very close, and the splash had soaked Theodore. George, Emily, and Foduck rushed over. "Are you all right, Theodore?" asked Emily. Theodore gave 2 quick toots to say yes. "You should return to the dock and pump yourself out," said George. But Theodore didn't want to leave. "I want to help," he said. George could only sigh. "Sorry, Theodore, but, well, you're just too small for this big job," he said. The Queen Stephanie gave a terrible groan. "Well, there must be something somebody can do," she called. George and Foduck turned to Emily. "We'll never pull the cranes here in time," said George. "We'll just have to try and pull harder." Emily agreed. "It's the only thing we can do," she said. "Pull and hope for something magical." "Come on, Theodore," said Hank. "We'd better get out of the way." "I guess so," replied Theodore, and he turned to go. "Hank," he complained, "I can hardly move. All this extra water from the splash makes me heavier." "Look, Theodore," said Hank with a little smile. "Now you're even shorter than I am." And he continued to push his waterlogged friend. "I know," said Theodore. "It's because of the water from the splash. It weighs me down." And then Theodore the Small and the Wet had an idea. And it did seem like something magical. "Stop!" he shouted at Hank. Theodore was very excited. "I must talk to the others. Push me, Hank, push!" Well, Hank didn't know what Theodore was thinking, but he knew that if his friend Theodore had an idea, oh, that was good enough for Hank. He pushed as hard as he could. "Hurry, hurry," shouted Theodore. "We have to save the Queen Stephanie." Well, it was time for a little magic. All the tugboats were exhausted. But Theodore was not ready to give up. "I have an idea," he said to them all. "It's too late," puffed Emily. "There's nothing we can do." Pearl made a decision. "All tugboats out of the way, please. Benjamin could collapse at any moment. It's too dangerous to stay. Everyone out." "Everyone, please listen," shouted Theodore. "What is it, Theodore?" Pearl asked impatiently. "Well," said Theodore, "if we can't raise the bridge, why not lower the ship?" Well, all the tugs stared at Theodore. "He must have water in his wheelhouse," said George. But as usual, Foduck was curious. "What do you mean, Theodore?" he asked. Theodore spoke quickly. "When I was splashed by that falling piece from the bridge, the water that filled me up made me heavier." "Is that why you're floating lower in the water?" asked Foduck. "Because the water made you heavier?" That's right, said Theodore. Well, Emily joined in. You mean, if we can make the Queen Stephanie heavier, she might get lower, too. Enough to float out from under Benjamin. Well, Benjamin was listening now. Try it, please, he called down. Yes, yes, right now, agreed the Queen. Phodak knew exactly what to do. Water, he said. Ha! I'll use my fire hoses to pump water into the Queen, and that'll make her float lower, just like Theodore. Do it, said Pearl. Do it now. George and I'll be ready to pull the moment she comes loose, said Emily. Phodak was already pumping water into the great liner. Please, Pearl, we want to help too, said Theodore. Pearl quickly looked at the Queen and decided it was safe to allow the tugs near. You and Hank get to the back, and on my signal, push as hard as you can push. It was exactly what the two small tugs wanted to hear. Well, sure enough, the water Phodak was pumping into the great ship made her heavier, so she could sink lower. Theodore's idea was beginning to work. Benjamin Bridge gave a huge sigh of relief. The Queen wasn't scraping against him anymore, and the Queen Stephanie was beginning to feel much better too. It's working, shouted Phodak. She's coming free. Pull, Pearl called to George and Emily. Push, she called back to Theodore and Hank. And then the Queen Stephanie, the largest ocean liner in the world, began to move. At last, she was free. All the boats and ships in the harbor began to blow their whistles and toot their horns. Even the Queen gave a joyous blast of her own. The harbor tugs all gathered around Theodore. You saved her, Theodore. Well done, said George. Emily laughed. And we thought you were too small to help. Theodore, I want you to get that water out of your hull, said Pearl. And then I'll have another job for you. Theodore was startled. Another job? For me? Later that afternoon, the tugs were guiding the Queen to another dock. George and the others were at the back. And sure enough, Pearl did have another job for Theodore, a very special job. Theodore was given the place of honor pulling from the front. For Theodore had proved that the small can be just as important as the big. Well, the Queen Stephanie stayed in harbor for about a week after that. All the damage was repaired, and we made Benjamin Bridge safe again, too. And when it came time for the great liner to leave, she left at low tide. You know, I'm very fond of the tugboats. All of the tugboats, the big and the small. Oh, thanks for visiting us here in the big harbor. I'll see y'all again next time, okay? So long.
He's a tugboat and a friendly tugboat too. A friendly tugboat too. Oh, Theodore likes to do the things that friendly tugboats do. Pushing and a pulling in the great big harbor, in the great big world is so much fun. So many brand new things to discover. Waking with the sun, gotta get the job done. Oh, Theodore and Emily, Phodak, Hank and George, and the harbor master too.